Hello, everyone. You're tuned into the Tired Boys podcast. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back for the second episode of the Tired Boys podcast. We've got a lot to get into this week. Of course, we had the Bahrain Grand Prix that we've been chatting about. Last week, we have the upcoming Saudi Arabian Grand Prix at the Jeddah Corniche circuit. Some of the usual suspects, some quick hitters, do you work here, and a few other segments, but looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, this will be, this will be the first time at the end of the episode. You can look forward to the cool down lap where Aaron and I will give you just a little sprinkling of kind of what's going on in our real lives. But we'll just save that for the very end. Up top, we just have a good amount of Formula One action to cover. So just roll the intro. Just
You're
this
not
chatbot for me.
2D.
Yeah. It was fun to reach out and touch you, my friend.
Circuit of the Americas is where it's a track that was created for racing.
So the race is a flat fee, and then it's the bake off afterwards where things get really kooky.
Okay, that's where all the weirdness comes out. Mercedes definitely started planning for their new car.
If Red Bull came out and was just like, Adrian Newey designed our car.
Yeah.
Whoa, yeah, did he really?
No way.
All right, great. So I think a good place to start here. Obviously, we had the Bahrain Grand Prix here this past weekend here, so a lot to talk about there. But before we get into that, Aaron, let's roll through some quick hitters here that we've had.
Yeah, so to hit it from the top, just this upcoming week, we have a pretty big week in motorsports. So all of you motorsport fans out there that are checking this out, we've got, of course, all the action in Saudi Arabia with Formula One, Formula Two, F1 Academy, all going to be going on. IndyCar has the St. Petersburg Grand Prix this weekend as well. We've got the
Now, is this the initial race for the IndyCar series at St. Petersburg?
I believe so. I
Oh,
think
that's
that's
exciting.
typically
Okay.
the starter for the year. And I've watched a couple years in a row now, and it's a good circuit. It's fun to watch. So I'll probably be checking out a lot of racing this weekend. I think that's on
Nice.
Sunday. And with this week, the F1 schedule being the race on Saturday again. We'll be able to space out our motorsports enjoyment. But MotoGP is getting going with the Qatar Grand Prix. We've got NASCAR as well, so kind of hitting a lot of the different racing series out there this weekend. So should be a fun one for anyone who's looking to just dive into all things motorsports.
Yeah, I was taking a gander at especially the upcoming F1 Academy. So if you don't know, F1 Academy is the all-women's series of Formula Racing single seaters. I was looking the Marta Garcia. She is not competing in the 2024 season. So she was the winner from the inaugural season, last year in 2023. She actually got a seat at, I believe it's Freaka Racing. It's a series, like a Formula One series, or not
Gotcha.
Formula One, a Formula series that I believe is in Europe, sponsored by Alpine. So her win, leveled her up. But if you're a returning fan of Formula One Academy, there's a couple of familiar faces that you would see from last year, but also a bunch of new names coming in. I'm looking forward to seeing. I think her name is Bustamante. I believe you would
Yeah,
pronounce it. She was
she's
really exciting to watch last year.
and
And
she's
she's
with
in the series
McLaren,
again.
correct?
Yep,
With
you got
yeah.
it. You got it. She's in the McLaren family. So, when I'm tuning into Formula One Academy, that's definitely who I'm going to be watching for. But, you got the third position in the series last year. She's still She's still racing this year in 2024, so obviously I think she's going to be tough to beat. Being that she has a lot of experience in the series and earned a good amount of points last year. If you're new to F1 Academy, we do I believe it's 7 rounds this year. But what's interesting is they do a couple of races at each of the circuits, so it's a bit of a different format to normal Formula One. But I think interesting in its own right.
Yeah, and a lot more similar to kind of the layout of F2
Mm-hmm.
and F3, where they have the sprint races and feature races. But for F1 Academy, I guess they have race 1, race 2, and race 3 across the weekend for points opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, very. I mean, it's a cool thing. Like when the W Series was going away, I know you and I both talked about concerns of the opportunities for women to just like break into the sport, and I think this is a great way for Formula One to sponsor something that really opens the door more for women drivers
Mm-hmm.
just around the world, and partnering
Mm-hmm.
with the teams for the first time this year, where all the drivers are having. I believe every driver is partnered with a team, and there are two drivers per. I just think that's a cool opportunity to grow the sport and just open the doors for hopefully future of some women F1 drivers, and just
Mm-hmm.
having that opportunity. So very, very cool. I'll definitely be checking out the F1 Academy this week, and looking forward to see how that goes.
For sure.
To talk about just briefly a couple of less fun and exciting topics. We had some reports that there's an investigation into FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem, who's going to be, or who apparently was reported to have interfered with the Jeddah race last year in 2023, overturning the post-race 10-second penalty that was given to Fernando Alonso, which brought him back onto the podium, knocking George Russell off of the podium that he got post-race for about a day, I believe. So definitely interesting. There's not a lot of other kind of details out there yet, but just to kind of see someone at that high level interfering with the racing and everything. We here on the Tyred Boys podcast, we like clean racing, and we want things to be fair. Like we think very highly of these drivers being the best 20 drivers in the world, and to interfere with them and taint their talents and skills and performances along with the teams, I think is just not something that we want to be in the sport. So hopefully they'll, just make the right decisions when doing those investigations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because ultimately, if you have, let's say, outside bodies making decisions about results, then the merit, that's not the right way to say it, that you drivers lose out on the opportunity to earn their own points on merit, and that's actually something that is like a draw about the sport, I think, for a lot of people. So if you're in a position where he's the FIA president is just like handing out results, that's definitely not a good look. And I would hope that if it ends up being true, we definitely have to see. I hope that moving forward, we we don't have this kind of stuff go on, because it heavily dilutes then the results of each of those races and makes them way less interesting to watch if fans will have this, fear in the back of their head saying like, oh, well, like the fix is in anyway, so like, what's it matter?
Yeah. Well, and after Abu Dhabi in 2021 too, with Michael Massey's stuff and everything, it's like
Don't mind me.
it's I know, but it that already threw a lot of things into question for people.
Oh, for
People
sure.
thinking that different teams are getting treated differently just based on what team name is there and everything, and that's not what you want. You like no matter the situation, like you said, the drivers have worked so hard across their lives to put themselves in this position of racing that if you're taking away their merit and them being successful based on just some outside perspective of who they like or dislike, then that's not good for the sport and does like taint
Hmm.
results in people's minds. And then yeah, like we said, we'll kind of have to wait and see. It's a
Hmm.
pretty recent um, investigation that seems to have come out, so there's not a lot of details. But to get into the next not so exciting topic, but just all the Christian Horner drama and everything that's been ongoing. We kind of avoided touching on it last week because we didn't feel like there was enough information that had been really put out there for us to speak, and kind of wanted to wait until we had a better gist of what all was going on and what happened. And
Yeah.
just from the leaks and looking through things, I mean, it would not be disappointed if Christian Horner was distanced from Red Bull. I just think that if everything that we see or have seen out there is real, that the situation is not good, and the way he was acting warrants Red Bull distancing themselves. So of course they haven't really yet, but I know one of the kind of side segments of this is just like the effect that this is now kind of having on the team, and could have just across the Formula One grid as a whole. A bad situation, which there are rumors now that Ford is potentially looking to kind of find a way out of their partnership with Red Bull powertrains for the 2026 season. Jos Verstappen coming out saying that he thinks that Christian should leave before he causes the team to implode. Then, of course, rumors of Max having an exit clause in his contract that could potentially allow him out of Red Bull. And, of course, I mean, you can only take the things that Jos Verstappen and people like Helmut Marko, you have to take everything with a grain of salt. But if Jos is speaking kind of from feelings that Max has, which you just don't ever know if he is,
Hmm.
then the potential for Max to look to leave the team opens up Mercedes rumors and
Hmm.
who's gonna come into the Red Bull seats, and just it's this big chain of reactions, all kind of from this less than savory situation.
For sure. So my sense of it would be the only way the castle comes crashing down is if, given all of the information, Red Bull decides to stick with him and say like, yeah, yeah, we back our boy. Like that horny behavior, we're all good with.
Yeah,
Right? That's like the only way that the castle burns down. I
right.
think if given all the information and a proper investigation is done, comma, caveat, part of the negative feelings is the internal Red Bull investigation that
Yeah.
we've determined everything is fine. Okay. I understand a little bit of frustrations there. That's a little bit unfortunate. However, we've got to stop and realize like every single one of these teams is going to advocate for themselves if they know, let's not say if they know, if they feel that whatever happened could be assuaged with just like a pay raise, a public apology, or whatever. But I'm relatively confident that these multi-billion-dollar corporations, if given all the information, will make the correct choice and say, look, Christian Horner, I'm sorry, that's not appropriate. We want our engineers, we want our assistants to all feel safe in this environment, because you know what? We're a winning team and nobody should have to put up with that. So Christian, you're gone. If Christian Horner is then gone, given all of this information, Ford will stick around for 2026. Helmut Marko's not going anywhere. Max doesn't have to think about the Mercedes seat, because all that's going to happen is they just will find the next best candidate, learn from their mistakes, and just move on. Because
Yeah.
at the end
And
of the day, the only problem is if he's still around, given
right.
confirmed shitty behavior.
Yeah. And so, and I definitely agree. That is kind of that would be the key to cause the castle to crumble and everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's and so you just hope that they can get the information verified and really make the right decision and everything, because it just again, something else that's tainting the sport but also negatively affecting people's lives and everything.
For sure.
And that's just not what anyone should have to worry about when they're going to work and everything.
Agreed.
So but to digress and all, of course there's a lot that we'll have to wait and see about both of those topics and everything. And we just can only hope that the right decisions and conclusions are drawn at the end of the day.
Because ultimately, I still want to be able to look positively towards Red Bull and what they have going on. But as a fan of the sport, as enjoying watching them really perform, that would hinder my enjoyment of them for sure, and
Oh,
make
yeah.
me not want to support it.
Definitely. And as someone who kind of came into the sport and became a Red Bull fan, like it's obviously not what I want, but it's a decision I would have to kind of make at that point.
For sure.
Because yeah, I just can't be supporting those kinds of actions and all. But to get over into another segment that we had on last week's podcast, we had the Do You Work Here? And after 1 week, I almost felt like changing it to Who Works Here? Because the big news, of course, is the Alpine team and all the pieces of the puzzle that are falling apart or just disappearing. It's like you open up the puzzle, it says 100 pieces on it, and you get down and you're missing, I don't know, quite a few pieces at this point. So why don't you kind of get into that breakdown of the Alpine struggles?
So after this weekend's race in Bahrain, we saw both of their drivers, Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon, experience like significant difficulties just over the whole of the weekend. We'll talk about the race in a little bit, but what ends up happening is significantly negative results after the weekend. And then it comes out that Alpine is losing more key personnel. Their technical director, Matt Harmon, and their head of aerodynamics, Dirk de Beer, leave the team after this weekend's, just continuing of bad results. So Alpine has gone from fourth place in 2022 to tied dead last at the start of 24. So just being on the backslide. If you remember, In 2023, last year, their at the time CEO Laurent Rossi warns the team. He makes a, or I should say, they make a public statement that says, like, if our F1 team does not improve, like, there will be consequences. And he was, they were very stern, very critical of their own organization. And less than a year later, they're out. So over the last 12 months, they've lost their team principal Otmar Zafnauer, their sporting director Alan Permain, and, like I'd said, their CEO Laurent Rossi. So just bleeding personnel all over, bleeding, like they don't even have, like, engineering going for them, or, like, their car's, like, not bad or whatever. Like, they are just losing, or what would you say? They are just coming up short in so many different angles, and just the bleeding of personnel just must be rough. Like, how can you keep a culture? How can you, keep pushing forward when heads of departments are just leaving? So that is super difficult for Alpine right now. But the plan moving forward, and who knows how long it's going to take to really see some results from this, but the plan for Alpine is to change to a, I don't know a better word for it, so I'm going to use this one. They're changing to a triumvirate, meaning three individuals in a position of power.
Instead
So
of a
instead
team
of having,
principal.
or I believe instead of having one technical director, they're splitting
Okay.
that role into three different people. So you're going to have
Gotcha.
Joe
Okay.
Burnell, the engineering director. You're going to have David Weeder, the aerodynamics director. And then you're going to have Chiron Pilbeam, the director of performance, to hopefully spread the responsibilities a little bit, spread the workload a little bit, and maybe that's going to be a start to help Alpine get on an upward trajectory, rather than this just avalanche that they've been experiencing since 2022. They were fourth.
And they got points in the first race last year, first race of the season. They had double points finish with P8 and P9 at last year's Saudi Arabian Grand Prix in the second race of the season. So starting off getting points, and then for this week to just absolutely, there's not much that you can call it other than kind of just like pathetic across the weekend. I mean, the car,
Sure.
and not from driver's standpoint or anything, but just the performance is not there. We had P17 and 18 in practice session 1, P16 and 18 in practice 2. Practice 3, we see them in 18th and 20th, 19th and 20th in qualifying, getting out qualified by Logan Sargent, who, of course, young driver, has had some struggles and everything, but just not able to really get much of any performance out of the car. And unfortunately, I mean, that's going to be pretty rough for both Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly. If they're seeing this team kind of falling apart, the buildings burning around them, they're going to want out. And if you're trying to get out in this season where we have, I think we said 13 contracts that are still up in the air, I mean, how do you even prove yourself to another team based on this year's performance? I mean,
That's really tough.
yeah, it's just sounds like a bad situation. I hope them shifting to the triumvirate. I think you had said it's a good word. I like that. It's an SAT word, but but switching to that, I hope that does allow them to kind of move the team in the right directions, a little bit of meeting of the minds. I mean, we saw with Ferrari when Matteo Binotto left, they split up the position that he was doing into the kind of chief engineer, and I think or technical director and racing director, I think, were the two positions that they kind of ended up with Mattia leaving. And so hopefully that will allow them to take this one step back and maybe take a couple forward here.
Yeah, hopefully, because man, something's definitely gonna have to change. Because you're right, they're just gonna lose who we've seen. Two drivers that have the potential to put up results given given the proper environment, the proper equipment. So yeah, it'd be a shame to really just see them just fade into obscurity because their team is, like you said, burning down around them. That would be unfortunate.
Yeah, and I know both of them, of course, have I think maybe not publicly, but kind of behind the scenes from what I've seen, had some interest towards that open Mercedes seat. I think any good driver that is on a midfield team or back of the field team would love to be in that seat, based on Mercedes structure, performance, and everything. But one name that I saw, and he's near and dear to my heart, but Seb Vettel's name came up as another potential curiosity for that seat position. Sky Germany was talking with Toto Wolff, and he mentioned that that Seb, he thinks, could still have some fast years in him if he wanted to kind of get back into it. I also
He's trolling
think
you.
Well,
He's trolling you specifically.
specifically me, Toto. I know you listen. I know you. you're just coming for me. But no, I think it's one of those things probably where a reporter in this realm with Sky Germany and everything was like, "Hey, open seat. We love our German guy, Seb Vettel. What do you think, Toto?" And Toto was probably like, "Oh yeah, he could probably be pretty quick still if he wanted to be." And that was probably the kind of the end of it. But I love Seb, and so I can't. When I see that kind of thing pop up, I have to bring it up.
Oh yeah, of course. I would imagine Toto and Seb are like, I bet they would consider each other friends. They would have known each other for long enough.
Yeah, quite some time, and Seb's the kind of guy that I feel like, especially in the latter stages of his career, just got along with everyone, just near and dear to all the drivers, teams' hearts, and everything. So, they built the beehives for him in where, I forget where that was, but for the conservation efforts and everything that he did with bees and sustaining them. So
that was gonna be my joke. I was gonna say, nah, he's not coming back to F1. He's beekeeping.
He's beekeeping. Yeah, he's not gonna trade in that beekeeper suit for a racing suit. But
I hear they're expensive.
I think both probably are. But yeah, I would love to see Seb race, whether that is for fun or getting back into the action. But to get into the actual racing we had this weekend with the Bahrain Grand Prix, I wanted to just quickly kind of touch on F2. We had talked a little bit about Andrea Kimi Antonelli, this Mercedes junior driver who, of course, is a name thrown out there for the Mercedes seat as well, getting his first opportunity in F2 after jumping over F3. Surprisingly, I think to a lot of folks, Prima Racing just not starting off too hot this season with their car's performance after last year being one of the front teams. I believe they may have won the F2 championship last year. I don't recall specifically. But starting out with a qualifying P17 and P18, but Andre Kimi Antonelli did out-qualify Ollie Behrman, who was a race winner last year in Formula 2, had a really solid season that he had put up. And so coming in first race of the season, out-qualifying your teammate, that definitely is a good look to start off as this kind of hotly anticipated young driver. Getting into the actual racing and everything, though, we end up with the sprint race and the feature race with Maloney being the winner of both, just having a great weekend. We also saw Marty and Crawford have some really good races. Crawford, unfortunately, retiring in the feature race due to some issues with his pit stop and everything, not being able to get back going. The F2 cars are so temperamental, it seems, when they stall out with being able to get them restarted and everything. It seems like I just remember a number of times in races last year that as I was starting to dive more into F2 and F3, where when these cars kind of stall out on track, they just aren't able to get them kicked into gear. They'll kind of go off onto the side and just not be able to restart the engine. So tough way to be retiring, but it looks like those three, at least from the sprint and feature race, it's a good way to start with kind of being at the front of the field, podium positions and all for both those races, especially for Maloney and Marty getting podiums in both.
Yeah, definitely a strong start. Now, do you think Maloney is going to be a driver to watch for the season, or do you think this was maybe a one-off, but he has some other competition?
I think that he's definitely someone to keep an eye on. He had a pretty good season last year, if I remember correctly, and I don't remember specifically. I think he's with Kick for the Kick Sauber for their junior team.
Okay.
So that could potentially be a spot if one of those seats opens up as driver lineups are shifting around and everything. I think some of the other guys, Isaac Hadjar with Campos Racing is a name that I heard quite a bit last year, had some good performances. For sure, another one, Dennis Hauger. So there's a few of these drivers that are returning who have been race winners, performed well. Like I said, Ollie Behrman, Andrea Kimi Antonelli's teammate. There's a pretty good field. So I think there is potential for some rookie opportunities into F1, dependent, of course, on how some of these F1 drivers end up doing across the season. Logan Sargent's seat, of course, is always until he really solidifies himself. I mean, it's not a done deal. I think that was
for sure not
one of the big surprises of the re-signing with last year's performances and everything. So there could be some opportunities for some of these guys to make their name this coming year. But lots of options out there. I mean, we still have Mick Schumacher hanging on the sidelines, Liam Lawson, who had some nice drives in the AlphaTauri last year. So there are some of these guys that still have a little more experience than the F2 guys that may be able to come in. So
yeah, some possible shifting into that Williams seat. That'll be a conversation for probably, maybe halfway through the season or so, when we really start to hear those the roster rumors. But yeah, interesting. I'll remember that name Maloney when we're tuning into F2. Now to move into the Bahrain Grand Prix that we had this past weekend, you want to start the conversation off with a little good, bad, and the Latifi?
yeah, a pretty good place to start, I'd say. So, for leading off for the good for me, I was thinking we can just do both of our goods, both of our bads, and then like kind of
Works
work
for
that
me.
way through. But for me, the good was Carlos Sainz. I think I was excited to see. Obviously, we've talked about his seat now being taken by Lewis next year, so kind of being in a position of needing to really put in good performances and everything to hopefully get a front team seat and everything. Though it's going to be hard to come by. But he just had a great weekend. He looked good all weekend long in the race. Some tough, hard racing with Leclerc, his teammate, but he comes out. Leclerc, of course, had some brake issues, which is nothing that he could do about that. But Sainz going out, putting himself on the podium to start the season is a great way to start when your seat's not secure.
Yeah, I would definitely agree, and it feels like in some way, not that he wasn't an impressive driver last year, but doesn't this drive feel like there's like a fire in his belly a little bit more, knowing that there's like something to fight for.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think he just assumed, honestly, and I think like a lot of us did, that based on his performances and everything, that he would end up getting re-signed by Ferrari, that they would like lock it in and everything. So I really do. I agree. I think just a fire in his belly, fire in his heart to go out and drive hard, and I would love to see the same kind of performances from Carlos across the season. That would be awesome, and just a nice, impressive weekend from him.
Yeah, and then for my good for this race, I'm gonna zoom out just a little bit. What I thought was just super intense was the qualifying session on the Friday, seeing how close the drivers were, how close the cars were. I mean, large swaths of positions were separated by tenths of a second, thousandths of a second. In your notes, you've got the Leclerc's qualifying lap in Q2 being quick enough, like to have taken it all, but he did do it in Q3, so it doesn't matter. Just the tension in the field, it really felt like it could have gone anybody's way, especially at the top there. So yeah, my good for this week was just how tight qualifying was, and it's just like, man, like this is what we've been missing out on. So I thought that was great.
Oh yeah, and the I think the stat that I saw was, so that in this engineering series with Formula One, you have, I think it was 1.1 seconds that went across the whole field in the first qualifying session and everything. That was only 18 of the 22 drivers in F2 were within that range in the F2 qualifying session. So
Wow.
in a spec series where they're all driving the same chassis and everything, that's how the racing ends up. You're closer in F1 than in F2. That's a pretty wild thing, and it makes it so exciting. I mean, I think I was sitting there during qualifying, kind of just waiting for Leclerc to snatch away the pole position, especially after that Q2 lap that he put in. So yeah, I mean that's what we hope. We hope that can carry over a little bit more into the race. But I think some of the things that we saw over the weekend will hopefully get a little bit closer, a little bit more consistency from the teams as we go on.
Yeah, definitely.
So to move on to the bad, mine we already discussed a bit, but Alpine just looked, like we said, rough all weekend. They have staff leaving, P19 and P20 in qualifying. They have the heaviest car from reports and everything, and just not really seeing much good from this weekend at least. Hopefully that's not a recurring portion of this segment, but I mean, we'll just have to wait and see. There's a long season ahead, but so far not a good look. Definitely the bad for me this weekend.
Yeah, and it's interesting because honestly, it doesn't even feel like the end of the road. It feels like they still have a couple more lumps to take before they're like
Yeah.
yeah, going back up again.
Oh yeah, it's not going to be a 1 week turnaround on performance here.
Yeah, unfortunately not. I agree.
So, but for you, let's hear
Sorry.
the bad. Oh no, I'm ready to hear your bad for the weekend.
I don't know if you're gonna get a kick out of this, but unfortunately, I feel like we've entered. This is my dark age, or this is my bad. The dark ages of Formula One have returned. We are just in another period of dominance where it just feels like not just this year, the year after, it's just all going to be Red Bull and Max dominated, just, like Lewis did. So for anybody who is hoping for, competitive F1, we've entered the dark ages.
Yeah, it's and even as a no, I'm more and more sliding that way. I mean, I like rooting for Max. I like rooting for the Red Bull drivers. Checo had a nice weekend as well. I do want somebody that if the most excitement I get is Leclerc going to snatch pole, but kind of in the back of my mind knowing that it doesn't matter for the race. Like it does leave a lot of excitement out. I mean, the teams in a lot of their areas have created more consistency with less engine issues, things like that, over the past couple of years. I mean, this was the first season of F1 where there were no retirements from the first race of the season. Like that consistency and everything leaves a lot less craziness up in the air outside of weather and weird kind of things with that. It's fun to see some chaos and to really see teams duking it out, and this team has a better car at this track, this team has a better car at this track because of these strengths of the car, and vice versa. So I'm not sad that Max won, but I'm also like, I would love it to be more competitive.
Yeah, sure. And obviously, like that's not totally how I feel. I've just been, picking that up in the zeitgeist a little bit. So, my bad is, said in jest, but I just wanted to, just see what your thoughts are on that. But yeah, now I want to hear your Latifi segment, just the truly ugly.
Oh yeah. So I think the biggest thing was just seeing a few of these teams, not engine issues, but just some early season hiccups, and particularly out of some drivers that I wanted to be able to have, like, just to show what they got. I mean, you've got Leclerc just having brake issues throughout. Seeing him lock up super early on multiple laps without any pressure on him and everything, I was like, what's going on? Like, this is... I assumed that he made a mistake early and flat spotted a tire, and then it just came back to haunt him again and again, until, of course, hearing about the brake issues that they were having.
Right.
Tough. Like, I like Leclerc as a driver. I think he's another one of those guys. I mean, watching him and Sainz battle each other on the track was fun. That was,
of course, yeah,
made me a little nervous for Ferrari fans in particular. But that it was exciting racing, and so a bummer that he's not able to really just put his best out there on the weekend due to some car trouble. For Williams, similarly, like, I want Logan Sargent to at least have the opportunity to prove that he should be out there. And so to see that they had these steering wheel issues that caused brake issues when they, after like 900 years, finally switched to a modern style wheel like the rest of the teams instead of a dashboard monitor and wheel and everything. Tough little hiccup to have with the first race weekend using the new steering wheel. So hopefully they get those little glitches and bugs worked out. But yeah, I just I want to see people have the opportunity. If Sargent had just messed up on his own, so be it. But I mean, he really didn't have much of a shot after being parked up on the side for a minute. So
Of course. Yeah. No, I think that's an interesting angle to take it, where you just want to see the drivers have the possibility to perform, not being held back by engineering, niggles, as Lawrence Barretto likes to say.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
There's a number of that's I guess the next little British slang that that I've heard this weekend that is a funky one.
Yeah. Well, you said hiccup, so I had to hit you with a synonym for hiccup.
Is that what that is? Like technical? Okay,
Right.
gotcha.
Like some like small little technical problem.
Gotcha. That's a little more like, I guess, subtle than the other British slang from this weekend, which I'll of course get to as we go in, which is being an effing helmet.
Yeah, which is pretty funny.
So
Well, here, let me just hit you with my Latifi really quick, and then we can talk about the race. I was dying watching Fernando, just like waiting for his tires to come online and just pass everybody back that he had just waved on through. He was just like, "You got it, bud. Keep it moving." That was really hard to watch. And you have this sense that the information being piped in, the information that he feels in the car, like the feedback is like, yeah, like this race will come to me later. He just ran out of laps for that to happen. And the tires, for the ones that he wanted to pass, they just never really fell off in the way that they expected. And so his race was just like, yeah, he was just like, "You got it. Just keep it moving."
yeah, and it's tough because I think, like, after last season, seeing Aston Martin have such a strong start and just kind of drift backwards as the season went on, like, and I like Fernando Alonso. Like,
Me too.
He's a fun guy, fun driver, and kind of similar to Seb in my mind as one of these older guys out there, being on the field that people at this point in their racing career like and like to have around and everything. So yeah, it's tough when the telemetry and everything's telling you, like, yeah, everything should pick up and it's just doesn't. That's a tough. You're just kind of in just no man's land a little bit.
For sure. Yeah, it was pretty tough to watch. But yeah, just that was an interesting little new segment that we had. Good, the bad, Latifi. But to talk about the Bahrain Grand Prix, maybe just kind of tie up some points that we haven't really hit. I wanted to ask you about the Ferrari race. So in qualifying, Charles is bemoaning the second set of soft tires that they should have kept and maybe would have gave them a benefit. Do you think if Charles had that set of soft tires at the end of the race, do you think he was in a better position?
Not entirely, no. Just and I think it's I think the main reason I say that is when we actually look at the race and everything. I thought, oh, maybe the weather, maybe that's going to make tire strategies interesting. Not really. Everyone pretty much went with the soft tire, hard tire compounds. Other than I think the Red Bulls and the V carbs. So when it comes that, I know it's I guess the Red Bulls and the RBs. I don't it saying RBs just doesn't sound right because I feel
it's
like
horrible no matter how you slice it.
yeah, so I think I'm just gonna have to commit to V carb and just
Sure.
just grind my teeth through it as I as I talk. But I think that they were the only drivers that did go with the soft tire compounds in the race. So when it comes to Leclerc, the guys he's battling around him and everything, I don't think it made a huge difference. I think he was just kind of on relatively even playing field, and who knows if that soft tire would have hung on as long as he would need at the end of the race and everything. So definitely an interesting thought. I just don't think there was enough difference in how the tires were shaking out necessarily for him to really have gotten too far up the field. He finished 14 seconds back from Carlos, 7 seconds up on George. So yeah, I don't think it would have been a big difference maker.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think that analysis seems pretty reasonable. But yeah, what are some of the other, points from the race that you wanted to hit on?
Well, one big thing that although we're talking about the Aston Martins and Alonso kind of having some struggles and everything, I will, this might be a first, but I will give some kudos to Lance Stroll after getting tagged by Nico Hulkenberg right off first off, he had a great start, shoots up the field right off the bat. I think he had started 4 spots back from he was a couple spots back in qualifying from Hulkenberg, gets up ahead of him by turn 1, and then Nico just goes right into the back of him after spinning out, dropping to last and everything, comes back and finishes a very respectable P10. Solid drive from him. I mean, he didn't make any mistakes from that point. It was just kind of a bummer of a situation, like nothing he could do about it. But overall, like a good recovery drive and picking up a point. He did what he could.
Yeah, for sure, and was a bit of a silver lining for a weaker start to the season, than we would have liked from Alonso. So yeah, maybe kind of evened out the mojo there for the Aston Martin outfit.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. The other driver that stood out was Zhou Guanyu, finishing P11 in the Kick Sauber. That was
Yeah.
I mean, he was right there. He was like, he did his best to put himself in a position. And when, the top 10 positions are taken up by the top 5 teams, then like he was right there to be that next guy up if something happened up ahead of him. So a nice drive from him, just very solid. So I was happy to see Zhou put in a nice drive. He's had some tougher performances. I think last season just couldn't do much with the Alfa Romeo car. So not a bad way to start off the season. Not a bad way to kick off the season.
Hey. No, I would definitely agree. I think a lot of the strength of his race was down to the well-timed pit stops. It seemed like his pit wall was able to find him some really good windows to pit into, to where he wasn't losing too much. And then in the laps in between his pit stops. He was putting in some really good defensive driving, not allowing for some key overtakes to be made on him, for him to be able to keep that position. So yeah, I would second that. I think it was a solid drive from Joe.
Yeah, and I think the other just like interesting note for me was I talked about it, but the little scuffle kerfuffle between Yuki Tsunoda and Danny Ricciardo. Yuki gets told, team orders Yuki. Danny's got the pace. Let him go after. Go after. I think it was Magnussen who was a little bit up on them, and neither of them end up catching K Mag. Yuki, I think at the time when the team orders were told, was kind of like, this is the closest that I've gotten to him. Like, I've been
Yeah, he was
working.
definitely on the attack.
And it's frustrating. That has to be frustrating to be like, I have been working lap after lap after lap to just inch closer and closer and closer to try and get this overtake done. And then right when I feel like, oh, just a couple laps to get this guy, a couple laps to go, and you're like, sorry, take a back seat, bud. I get his frustration, but
For sure.
the way he handled it, I would have much preferred the typical Yuki just yelling over the headset and over the radio, as opposed to kind of doing a little sketchy dive bomb in the cool down lap by Danny Ricks. Like, all it takes is Ricardo like not paying super close attention, checking out the stands, the smoke, whatever from the fireworks, and all of a sudden you have a post-race collision between teammates. Like, it's just not a great look, and gives me like a little anxiety, intrigue kind of like how this season's gonna go. I mean, both guys are competing for their seat along with potentially a Red Bull seat, if Checo's seat does end up opening up. Could be a pretty chippy season if we're seeing it start like this early.
Yeah, and you hope it just doesn't come to, like you were saying, something ridiculous like a post race collision. Yeah, silly from the hot-headed Yuki, but not far out from from his normal behavior. It's just unfortunate now that it's like directed at a teammate, where really it shouldn't be at the teammate. It should be at the like your pit wall.
Right.
Like it's not like Danny was calling for this. So yeah, just unfortunate all around. We hope we don't see it from Yuki.
And for P13, P14, like being you're not racing in the points ever. I know it affects official driver standings and whatnot, but yeah, not a great look. But those were the main notes that I kind of had on the Grand Prix. Any other topics that you want to touch on in a little bit?
Yeah, just the last thing that I'd like to hit on is the Mercedes weekend. It seemed like, based on words from Lewis Hamilton, that they were on two different setups for George and Lewis, where it seemed like George had just the butter setup for the weekend. His qualifying looked great. His race pace looked really good. So yeah, I think George Russell had a really good weekend. But in the post race or post qualifying interviews, Lewis Hamilton's quoted as saying, we took a more experimental setup to hopefully maybe lose out on qualifying pace, but have a better race day. So that's what they were looking forward to, and it just doesn't feel like that ended up being the mark that they were able to hit. So unfortunate in that regard, especially where I cast my mind back just a little bit, and when Mercedes was struggling with their chassis and their side pod plan and all this, Lewis was always saying like, yeah, I'm taking the more experimental setup, and then George is getting the setup that's going to win points. I really hope that's not the route that they're going to take every weekend. To some degree, I feel like George, he's a mainstay in the team now. Like, it shouldn't always have to be Lewis like taking
Mm.
the quote unquote experimental setup. And who knows whose choice it is? Maybe it like
Yeah.
is just straight up Lewis, like, hey, I want to go this route. Like, yeah, fair enough then. It just strikes me as odd seeing that, when watching the race. It's like, wait, why can't Lewis be P3?
Yeah. Well, and I think it, from what I saw, it sounds like that was a little bit of a Lewis's side of the garage decision, and
Mm-hmm.
whether that was from just practice sessions and him testing out different setups and going, this one felt the best for race
Mm-hmm.
pace. This one I feel like when the lights go out is gonna give me that consistency across the race, and George's just worked out just as well, if not, well, I mean, I guess I would say probably worked out just as well. He just started up in P3 where Lewis is starting in P9, and then
Mm-hmm.
finishing P5, P7 like that. Maybe Lewis's setup did work a little bit to kind of bring himself up, but being down in P9, maybe he was just a little too far back from the get go to be able to, for that setup difference to jump him up ahead of his teammate for the race.
Yeah.
But like you said, George had a nice drive. He looked really good. I mean, defended hard against Checo for a while. Checo had to go for that kind of crazy dive bomb to get past him a bit earlier in the race and everything. And so a nice drive from George. I think he kind of did what he could with the car for the weekend, and
For sure.
not a bad way to start with a P5. I'm sure they want to compete with the Ferraris a little more, but not a brutal weekend for the Mercedes boys.
No, definitely not. It's just just that buzz phrase, experimental setup. I'm just curious how much more we're gonna hear that come from Lewis and the Mercedes camp.
Yeah.
But you do got to dial things in. So not being too critical, just asking some questions. But yeah, that was just some of my final thoughts here for the Bahrain Grand Prix. As everyone should know, we had Max finishing P1, we had Sergio Perez finishing P2, and we had Carlos Sainz up there on the podium with them in P3. Just want to do a little look ahead here to the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, which we have coming up the week following, or the weekend following this episode. So just Aaron, give me a couple words here. What are you looking forward to for the upcoming race?
Well, I'm curious, I think mostly to just see which teams kind of shift around this first race. Obviously, we saw Williams having in last season, this like insane straight line speed that's causing all sorts of just issues for teams to get past them. The Jeddah Corniche circuit is this just long, fast track, lots of good straights on the track and everything to be able to go and just put the hammer down. I don't think the Williams car necessarily has those same. It does. It seems like they maybe tapered down some of those strengths to kind of build a little bit more of a balanced car. But I think that's going to be exciting to see things shift around. But also Checo last year, this was one of his races that he won on the season. Just put in a solid drive. We had him up there in P1. We had Max in P2. So I mean, I would not be shocked to see him put in a nice drive again this weekend. He had pole position last year. So I think obviously in a lot of people's minds, Max is this number one, and that no one's gonna touch him. Checo's in the same car. It's a new season, and we still have yet to see whether Checo's kind of recovered his mental that seemed to start to struggle in that head-to-head battle last year, and maybe come in here and bring good competition to his teammate and everything. There was talk in Bahrain that he kind of just got to his spot, didn't need to push, just kind of cruised on. There was no reason to jeopardize anything. But hey, the points reset before last race, so it's still an opportunity for him to go after the title as well.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think that's I think that's an interesting point. Observing that, it's just one result. Checo can't count him out, and this Jeddah Corniche circuit could be a place where we see him shine. Right there with the what seems to be a strong Red Bull car.
Yeah, and so it's still so. I mean, I keep saying it. It's so early in the season. There's a lot of races to go. So the title's not out of reach as much as I think it is in people's minds, because Max is on another 8-win streak and just this ridiculous, just insane run of performance that we haven't really seen before outside of his run last year. So, but yeah, that's kind of the biggest things I'm looking for this week in the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. We just, to mention again, don't miss out on the racing action on Saturday. There's going to be Thursday practice, Friday qualifying, Saturday race. So looking forward to that this upcoming weekend. But to kind of start wrapping things up with the cool down lap for this week, we talked about it. We're going to go into one of our previous segments from our last podcast that we did that we really enjoy, and kind of brings a little bit of our flavor into the podcast and everything with the flavor of the week.
Yeah, really excited to get back into this. I've got a good one here for you this week. I think you're going to be pleased. So my flavor of the week here, my food. Sarah made some homemade pot stickers. She included me in the process. I was wrapping them up, hitting them with the liquid glue,
Nice.
doing the wrapping.
Whipped up the dough and the little filling, and you're getting to tie it up. Tie it with a bow.
She made the filling. We just purchased the little, dumpling flats, the little squares. Fuck, dude, killer. Like if they would be something that came out at a restaurant, I'd be like, amazing. Very, very pleased. So that's great. My visual medium here, Sarah and I have been just perusing through Star Wars. We started with Tales of the Jedi, and we're doing it chronological order.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because we've already seen all the the big moments. We've seen all the films. We've seen this and that. So now we're just like, okay, what does it feel like if you watch it from the very start and just track it all the way through?
I love it. I've done that,
go ahead.
Including all the cartoons and everything. I'm all about it. I've done it before. It is a fun way to watch through, and a cool perspective on the kind of chronology of everything.
Oh yeah, and so it's been very entertaining. We are on season 2 of The Bad Batch. So we're,
nice.
Post Clone Wars, first years of the Galactic Empire. So all juicy stuff. My music here that I've been listening to, bro, I've been getting into some old hip hop. I've been listening to some of the Wu-Tang members' solo ventures, namely Liquid Swords by the Jizza. We hit Only Built for Cuban Links by Raekwon. We hit Supreme Clientele from Ghostface Killah. Dude, I love the sampling that these guys do. They include clips from like old like Iron Man cartoons. They include clips from like old kung fu movies and stuff, and like use that to kind of tell a story. So yeah, it's just been fun to listen to some old school Wu Tang. But yeah,
Very
man, that's
nice.
my flavor of the week. What have you got going on here?
So my flavor of the week is very much tied up with the activities from this past weekend. We're at my buddy's bachelor weekend down in Florida. We went to Philadelphia Phillies spring training. We got to see a couple games, but being down in Tampa, Colleen and I a couple years ago had been down there for a wedding, and so I kind of reeled us into Whiskey Joe's, which is a nice little Gulf Gulf side bar,
Nice.
good seafood, good drinks, and everything. So I had some oysters, which are always a go-to, along with just some other tasty seafood there. Then for music, the group of guys put together this playlist of just all these like party and fun songs from the past few years and everything that we were just
Nice.
jamming to kind of across the weekend. So pretty big variety of music, but it was just fun to have a lot of these hits and bangers that we were enjoying and jamming out to
Hell
at
yeah.
at the house and whatnot. And then for just visual medium slash activities and all, going to these spring training baseball games was just a cool experience. Like not having done that before, going and seeing some early spring baseball, seeing some of the pro players kind of as they're getting their warm ups in for the season, seeing some of the young guys get an opportunity to go out and play some ball. Very very fun time. So shout out to Zach for his bachelor weekend. It was a great time. So that kind of encompassed the week for me with my flavor of the week.
Hell yeah, man, dude. That sounds awesome. Nice trip to Florida, getting some beach vibes going. Man, I'm glad to hear it. Sounds like you had a
Yeah,
great time.
working on my tan a little bit as much as you can in early March, but
For sure.
uh, but yeah, that kind of wraps us out for this week's episode of the Tired Boys podcast, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate anyone who's hopped on board for the ride with us as we're going through this season and beyond with the different motorsports. Looking to bring a nice recap of this coming week's action to y'all next week.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun episode. Pleasure doing this. This has been another episode of the Tired Boys podcast. Thank you all for listening. Peace out, everyone.
See ya.